All right, welcome everyone to our interactive webinar, Your VMS Questions Answered. I hope you came prepared with your questions about VMS. Our speaker today is Brian Denmead. You can go ahead to the next slide, Brian.
Yeah, ready?
Brian is our field application engineer and slash tech guru. He's passionate about helping secure the world by educating others about the latest physical and digital security systems. As for GANs, we've been a global leader in designing, developing, and manufacturing world-class intelligent security solutions since '99.
You know, that almost syncs up with the mouth moving on the little guy up there. That's perfect. All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go through some stuff, basically about VMS. Uh, what is it in terms of how do you choose, or what should you consider when looking at a VMS for your personal usage? What type of features are we looking at? What type of compatibility and scalability should we be considering when comparing different VMSs? What kind of reporting capabilities or even analytics if you're in a position where analytics are also going to come into play in a configuration requirement? So how do you choose the right VMS? Well, first thing to do is actually look at your organization. What size is that organization? Are we looking at a need for a couple of cameras, say 9 to 16, 16 to 24, 24 to 32 cameras, somewhere in that range, maybe even 48 on the high for a smaller deployment consideration? Or are we looking at something that's going to be more complex, requiring cameras up closer to the 100 camera count or far greater? Are we looking at something that's going to be a single building or multiple buildings that are going to require the VMS to monitor and secure? All of this comes into play in terms of that initial complexity and size one should expect for the VMS to support. In our case, we'll look at our Quartrol software, and Quartrol will offer you simplicity from the single server Premier package to complexity or enterprise deployment with our global package, which is our multi-server solution. Both these solutions offer you compliance with many different types of equipment and functionality. So, what are some of these features that they're going to offer you, and what are some of the features that you should be looking for in a VMS? Well, as we mentioned, scalability. So, single servers solution, basically that single server can only scale so far for a given location. A multi-server solution obviously will have much greater scalability as you can put servers in multiple locations and have them communicating with one another. Scalability from the single server means you're on a one-to-one administrative function. If you take that same single server solution and put it in two buildings, you're now going to go what I affectionately call door to door. You're going to have to go to the door of the first location for that first server. You're going to have to go to the door of that second server at its second location. If you're looking at something like our Quattro Global, where it's the multi-server solution, you're looking at the ability to sit in one spot and access everything from that one spot. So it's simply one spot as opposed to door to door. And there are advantages to that, compatibility wise. So we may be looking at in that existing infrastructure, we may be looking at brand new infrastructure. But if we're looking at either way, you're going to be looking at multiple manufacturers and what types of cameras they may providing. They may provide you with anything from a 2 megapixel camera up to a 4 megapixel or a 5 megapixel. Maybe they're going to offer you a fisheye camera or a multi-sensor camera. Maybe we're going to look at a 8 megapixel 4K camera, or even potentially an 8K camera in if it's a sporting event where you kind of really need that high resolution. So again, by way of example, our Quattro software supports over 15,000 devices, and that's from over 190 different manufacturers. So it has that compatibility with all the different devices that may exist in a pre-existing installation or could be considered for a brand new installation. compatibility is now answered in terms of, okay, I have X, Y, and Z cameras, X, Y, and Z recorders or encoders, and are they on that list of compatible devices? Yes, they are. Um, Now, another thing to check when we're talking about compatibility is, does the VMS offer you a location on the manufacturer's website where you can go in and look at what the supported devices are and seeing if your device that you are planning to deploy or existing deployment has is on that list? Yes, it should have that. Cortrol does have that on our gamsecurity.com website as well. So these are all good things to know. Ease of use, advanced analytics, reporting capabilities. Ease of use is basically your learning curve. Can you sit down in front of it, and will it take you a few minutes, a few hours, a few days to get up to speed with how to use it from a client perspective? In other words, I'm bringing up a camera. I want to review events that that camera may have recorded. I want to take and export a video clip of one of those events to hand off to somebody. That client learning curve should be fairly low from the perspective that the people who are going to be monitoring those clients may be looking at a lot of different cameras. And you want to have an environment where they can quickly go from point A to point B. Control is one of those VMSs that offer that. Uh, Analytics. So when we're looking at analytics, what are we looking at? We're looking at either camera side analytics, net appliance side analytics, cloud-based analytics, or server-side analytics. So you really want to know, does your VMS support all those potential sources for analytics to come from? Again, Control does, and that's always a blessing. But that is one of the things to consider when looking at analytics. And what type of analytics? Do you need simple analytics or do you need advanced analytics? Reporting capabilities. The reporting capabilities can be anything from just generally um, statistics that may get generated from events that are happening within the VMS environment. The reporting may have to do with notifications that are popping up on screen or being sent out by email or by text message. Various different ways that those reports may come into play. Maybe the health metrics of a device. You know, what is the current status of the software, of the hardware, auditing functions in terms of users that have been on the system? Have they gone into certain cameras? Can you check on that? These are all reporting capabilities that come into play and should be considered. And by the way, yes, Control does have that. Integrations. So what type of integrations do we consider when we're looking at a VMS? Well, rarely is a location simply a video management system without an access control system to control the ebb and flow of traffic into that location. So Control supports various access control companies. This should be one of the fundamental things that you're looking for when you're looking at a VMS. What type of access control systems do you think or do you have that may be deployed at that location? Is that access control company supported by the VMS? Other types of integrations may be more cutting edge in a sense. IoT devices. You know, more and more IoT devices are becoming prevalent in the market and making their way in usage for security. They may be anything from building environmentals, where you can bring that information into the VMS and use those reporting capabilities we spoke of earlier to monitor and get reports on when the environmentals are working well and when they're not. So early warning system. So now you're looking at a VMS that should be able to do a lot more than just video management. It should be able to do integration management. It should be able to do analytics management. It should be able to do reporting management. So lots of things to consider. So how do you choose the right VMS for your organization? How do you choose the right VMS for the current deployment that you may be looking at? Or how do you choose the VMS for an existing site? So we talked about size and complexity. We didn't quite touch on budget, but let's touch on that for a moment and think about that. If you are a smaller site deployment requirement, your budget's probably not going to be as luxurious as the guy with the multiple locations. And that's fine. you still want to take that into account. You still want to consider, okay, my budget is this. Is the VMS that I'm looking at going to fit within that? Is it scalable in both directions? Can it scale down as well as scale up? What type of hardware does that VMS require? And will that hardware fit within the budget? What level of security is required for that location is also going to come into consideration when looking at that budget. Do I need level one, level two, level three? In some areas, they refer to it as tier instead of level of security. Does that VMS support? Cybersecurity comes into mind. Um, when we're looking at budget from a hardware perspective, you're going to want to have a VMS that can scale down to smaller hardware platforms. And you're going to want to look at a VMS, if it's a larger budget, that can scale up to greater hardware platforms. Oh, yes, Quattro can do that. Let's check a few other things here. So, what are the benefits of using VMS? Well, if we've already determined that a VMS falls within the budget, it has the scalability, and it has the compatibility, and it has the additional functions. What other things should we consider? Remote access. Think of it this way: if we're looking at a single server solution, there's a good chance that the person monitoring the client is going to be on site. It's kind of a self-contained environment in most cases. So remote access really isn't a consideration at that point unless they're off-site monitoring agents. Um, More than anything, it's going to be the multi-site locations where you're going to have those multiple servers deployed, and you're going to have that one person sitting at a central location, and then you need to reach out to those different areas. So remote access may be something simple as I'm bringing up my client and I'm connecting to that remote server to pull in the cameras. Remote access to the video footage is covered by that kind of scenario. It might be remote access where you literally need to bring in a browser as a video source, and that gives you remote access to devices that are on location that, they're not cameras per se. Maybe they're alarm panels. Maybe they're recording devices or encoders that you need to access through a browser interface, and you don't pull in traditionally the way you would a camera. That's another form of remote access. Remote desktop access is another option. So does your VMS support remote desktop for remote access? The advantages to that is you're running a VMS on a server. Again, if we're talking about a multi-site deployment, how are you managing and maintaining those servers? Windows, Microsoft loves to come up with and surprise everybody with updates, whether they're hot fixes, whether they're new builds that are being rolled out, or new functions that are being added to an existing build. And you want to be able to manage that. But if it's a multi-site location, if you have to go on site for each location, you're back to that door to door. So remote desktop gives you the advantage of being able to remote into that desktop and perform that uh, operating system maintenance, if you will, on Windows without having to go door to door. Live notifications on the go. Are you getting, what kind of notifications are you getting? Are you getting them through email? Are you getting them through text message? Are you getting them through mobile app? You're getting push notifications. You want to make sure that your mobile device, your VMS supports that type of mobilization. Centralized control and management. Well, you kind of already touched upon that. If you want to have a VMS that from one location is able to do the majority of stuff without you having to go door to door. So if we're talking again, referencing the multi-location or multi-server role, you're getting that centralized control, that centralized management of your devices. With the remote access, you're getting the management of software as well. Can your VMS push out updates? The new update comes out for your VMS. Can you push that new update out to the clients? Can you push them out to the servers? You want to be aware of that. We touched on the advanced analytics. Does your VMS support the type of analytics that you're going to deploy? Again, on the edge, meaning camera, uh, net appliance, which may be a box that's bringing video streams in and it applies analytics to those streams. Is it cloud-based? Is it something that is running on the server itself? So you want to make sure those different types of analytics or sources are supported. The reporting capabilities, as we mentioned before, increased security and safety. Let's revisit that a little bit further than what we mentioned before. When we talk about the security and safety, we're not just talking about your ability to create a user and sign in. We're talking about the communications. We're talking about the data that's on those servers. Can somebody easily access that information, uh, or even worse, leak it to a community of people who want to take advantage of it? So now we're talking about cybersecurity and we're talking about data security. Is the communications between that server and the cameras, that server and the clients, that server and the storage medium, is it encrypted? Does it make it difficult for somebody who's looking to do wrong with that data? Does it make it difficult for them to access it? By way of example, Quattro offers AES encryption 128 as well as 256. It offers support for HTTPS. I'm sorry, HTTPS, secured uh, communications. And it supports encryption of the data on the hard drives and supports encryption of the individual databases. The video coming in from the cameras is also saved in a proprietary algorithm. So you can't just go onto that hard drive, open up a media player, and expect to be able to see that video because it is encrypted, it is secure. So these are all things you want to consider as well, especially when you go into scenarios where the deployment site has higher and higher security requirements. So, what are some of the common challenges that you might face when considering a VMS? Well, again, these are things we've kind of touched upon already. Compatibility issues, you know, is it an existing installation? Is it a new installation? What cameras, what devices are you looking at? Hardware and software wise? Are we looking at existing servers that maybe you're repurposing by putting the new VMS that you're considering onto that repurposed server? Software wise, do you have all the latest updates installed? Do you not have the latest updates installed? Can the VMS push out software updates? Managing and analyzing large amounts of video. Basically, how does it handle that video data? Does it make it very transparent? In other words, you really don't see it. It's being done in the background, so you're sitting there with a low learning curve and being able to just easily manage that data. If you're looking at video data from a monitoring agent perspective, can you do a video wall? Can you do a command center? Can you utilize multiple monitors to take advantage of that extra hardware, extra real estate? Um, Security and privacy, sensitivity uh, on the information. As you said, is the encryption there? Is the cybersecurity, data security? These are all the challenges that you're going to face for existing and new deployments. And we've kind of already talked about how some of that stuff can be addressed. So you really want to make sure that those challenges can be addressed as you move forward with your review of the VMS. All right, what are the advantages do I have using Quattro? Well, I've already given you uh, sneak peeks on some of that stuff. So we know we've got the centralized management. Even if we are looking at the Quattro Premier single server, you still it's centralized management for that server. So for its cameras, for its storage, for its security functions, even the ability to push out updates for people who are using the client, or even if they're using the administrative console, management console, you can push all of that out. So that centralized management is there. What if you move out to global with its multiple servers? Same functionality is there for centralized management. What about customizing the user interface? You can do that too. If you go into the client and depending on the environment, you need to have a quick visual representation of a severity level for different alerts or different notifications, different functions. Quattro's client will allow you to modify or customize your visuals, even remove some of them if you've got components that aren't needed for a particular deployment. For the administrative side, You can add and remove columns so that information that is related to, say, camera streams. And there's quite a few columns there, so I won't get into all of them, but you can add or remove some of those columns that may or may not be relevant. And that's just tip of the iceberg. Advanced video analytics. Control supports every type of analytic we were just talking about in terms of analytic source. If it's camera side analytics, Control supports it. If it's a net of planes, Control supports it. If it's cloud-based, Control will support it. And if it's server-based, Control offers that. So secure video, basically cybersecurity and data security. Control offers that, as we mentioned before, with the support of the AES encryption. As well, oh, there's others in there as well. Real-time monitoring and alerts. Yes, the client is real-time when it comes to your monitoring, when you're getting alerts. One of the really nice features, I consider a really cool feature personally, is the alarm pane that you can have off on the side. You can set up notifications where these alarms are going right into that queue management panel or pane and very quickly see what's going on and respond to that. It also even allows you to create individual tabs where if you're looking for specific types of status for those alarms, you just quickly click on them. What about add-on modules? You know, the VMS supporting all the devices and everything is great, but can you expand it? Can you add a face recognition module onto that software package? Yes. Can you support third-party face recognition packages? Yes. Same thing with LPR. What about container identification? Can you add that? Yes. So there's a lot of things that the control allows you to add to it. So it's not just you buy this package and then you're stuck with that package. This package can grow as your needs grow. It can offer more if you are in a position where your deployment requires a more complex setup. What else do we have here? We have integrations. So we touched upon the integrations before as well. You know, what type of integrations does Quattro offer? As we mentioned before, over 15,000 devices. There's a pretty good chance your device will be supported. And part of that support also goes to a more uniform or blanket coverage when we start talking about OnVIM and RTSP stream support. Uh, Not just SDK, but also API. So when you're dealing with an open API structure, you're able to get handshaking with devices without, even if you don't have that initial integration readily available. As long as you set up a quick API script, you can have events being sent to different other systems or other devices. Access control systems. We have compatibility with quite a few of those. I can kind of carry systems, Phoenix, Gallagher, visual access controls, Roger, Rax 5, just to name some of them. Preston is one of them. So we've got quite a handful of direct integrations. And if we don't have a direct integration, we go back to that API where you can use the API script to handshake between the access control system that you have and Control. So lots of benefits there. We talked about the monitoring side of things. So whether you're on premise or off premise, whether you're sitting at a laptop, a desktop, whether you're on your mobile device, you're able to still monitor, receive notifications, receive alerts, and keep you aware of what's going on with with your premises, with your property. Flexible and compatible with thousands of integrations. Again, from cloud analytics to hardware analytics to devices to access control systems. There's a great flexibility in there from traditional SDK level to modern API level. So it's pretty robust system in that respect. So let's take a look at some of these things from a vertical perspective. Emergency communications. So what's involved and what really defines emergency communications? In essence, it's the ability to reduce the time of response for emergency personnel. So whether it's in most cases, we really are referring to the police, but it could also roll over to fire and safety. It can roll over to EMS response times. Anything that allows the site location to quickly alert and of a, basically address an alert or make alert of a situation that is happening that allows, in this case, emergency personnel to respond in a faster manner. So some examples, Cultural works with, has the integration with our secondary devices, our D2PD or direct to police communications hardware. This allows in one example, a school to directly communicate with police departments to let them know, hey, we've got things going on. And there's details that should be discussed when we say that. But in a general sense, it's going to help reduce that communications time and reduce that response time that the police departments will have with the school. PA systems. All right, it's great that we've got the reduced times with our emergency personnel. What about locally, right at within the building? We've got integration with PA systems that allows to get either a pre-recorded message or a live uh, message coming across the PA systems. Direct chat capabilities, where again, the whole purpose of that emergency communications is reduce time, let people know what's going on in a very orderly fashion, if you will. We talk about 4K bullets with AI, but this could really be any camera with AI. So examples being our GANS Pixel Pro camera, which has built-in AI-based smart motion, where it'll, besides just being able to determine that there's motion involved, it's able to determine what's the cause of that motion. Is it a person? Is it a car? Is it a bicycle? Or a bike, for argument's sake? And be able to reduce false positives in that fashion. Are we looking at verticals where you need to have uh, a single camera solution instead of a multi-camera solution? So then we're looking at 360 cameras. Are they providing 360, 180? What resolution are supported? Do they have analytics? Do they not have analytics? Do they have varifocal? Do they have fixed lenses? And this becomes a vertical almost unto itself because of the way multi-sensor cameras really impact a deployment design. Access control systems. The access control systems, as we said earlier, really control and are designed to control the ebb and flow or the traffic of people coming to that building, whether they're on foot, whether they're in a vehicle. Really helps control that people who are supposed to have access to a particular location do, and people who are not supposed to have access to a particular location don't. What about 3D spatial security or, or LiDAR in this case? What is it? How does that come into play? Why is that a vertical? Well, think of it from a traditional perspective. Traditional 2D security means you have a fence. One can get under a fence, over a fence, get around a fence if a door's left open. Um, it's a little more difficult to get through that fence, which is why it's a great deterrent. But what happens when they get over, around, or under that fence? 3D or LiDAR gives you that cube of space in between. And think of it like a cube of jello. Anything that's going to go through that cube of jello is going to be recognized, and that's how LiDAR works. So you have 3D spatial security in that respect. So that someone gets around the fence, well, they can't get around the cube, or they can't get around this three-dimensional space because if they go under it, they still got to come up into it. If they try to go over it, they still got to come down into it. If they go around it, they still got to come around into it, unlike the fence. So that becomes its own vertical. And this is a vertical where we're talking about infrastructure, if we're talking about manufacturing utilities, we're talking about large public transportation locations where you have large open spaces, or you've got spaces where I shouldn't say open. You're looking at a substation, for argument's sake. It's not really open, but it's easily accessed. That type of perimeter and or space securing becomes really important. What about IoT smart sensors, or IoT sensors, or IoT devices in general? How are those playing into a lot of this? Why is that a vertical? It's a vertical because it takes on a life of its own in the same way that access control takes on a life of its own. These sensors are there to provide additional information. A smart sensor would be utilized in building environmentals. Now, it can detect the quality of the oxygen in that building. It can detect if there's chemicals that shouldn't be there in that building. It allows you, well, traditionally, it lets you know if somebody's vaping or smoking in areas where they shouldn't be. Maybe you've got a chemical closet and somebody hasn't closed the cap correctly on one of those bottles or one of those containers or tubs. An IoT smart sensor can detect that chemical buildup, and as soon as that threshold is exceeded, notify through your video management system, through your VMS. They can let, if they've got a speaker and or a light built into it, they could flash, they can initiate a sirens or a large piercing sound. So they become a vertical in that sense. What about utilizing them for things such as bullying, aggressive behavior, where you can pick up the sound of somebody starting to yell, starting to get louder and louder? Gunshot, glass being broken. These are all areas that microphones in these smart sensors could pick up and interpret what they are. And again, adds more of that notification system that goes, again, comes back around to emergency communications, helps reduce the response time. And that's probably the biggest thing. Does the VMS on a whole help reduce response times? Does it help reduce false positives? These are really things you should be looking into. So we get to go to my favorite part. This is where we get into demonstration. So I'm going to bring up Quatroll's Management Council first. Not going to dive into it. I just want to show from the security perspective. How does Quatroll help you address cybersecurity? Oh, we can go right up to the top right corner here. Click on cybersecurity. I'll go full screen on that. And out of the box, does the cybersecurity is not giving you any indication of things that can be changed or things that can be improved because it's an initial configuration, it's an initial deployment. But now, once you determine what level of security you need, do you need low level? Do you need a medium level? Or do you need a high level of security? Qualtrics will turn around and through this dashboard, give you really good guidance as to things that need to be reviewed and considered for locking down the software, locking down the communications, locking down the storage to make it more difficult for people who would love to get their hands on that data for nefarious reasons. Once the stuff is enabled, we can come right over here and look, we've already got a notification. You can see right there. We can go to that server. Give that a moment. There we go. I can come down. I can go over to that little guide, and what does it tell me? One or more storage directories is not encrypted. So now I can go in because it's guided me through the steps. We talk about a learning curve. Well, if I knew next to nothing about cybersecurity, I could follow this guide and make my system a lot more secure. So there's an example of a very low learning curve right there. Two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is disabled. It is recommended to enable two-factor authentication. I don't, all I need to know about two-factor authentication at this point is that it's going to require me to receive a code from the server, type that code into the dialog box before I'm allowed to get into the software to do my job. Low learning curve. Oh, we want to talk about, I'll give you a quick peek on this one. Let's go to new device. Let's go to model. And we talk about 15,000 devices that are supported. Well, this is where you could start if you're at the software itself. As you can also go to the website and go to the supported hardware, but you can also come right here and say, okay, who am I looking for? Am I looking for robotics? Am I looking for access? If you know the model of the device you're looking for, you can put that in. The support is just a quick scroll through. Not going to go through each manufacturing stated, but as you can see, we have a lot. What about from our, we'll skip out, oh wait, we'll show you this real quick as well. So we talked about monitoring functionality. So monitoring can either be static or it can be live. Just depends on your deployment needs. We go to audits. We can see what users have been doing. We can see what's going on with our server or servers. I'll give that a moment to come up. So monitoring and reporting right there. You can have this stuff emailed to you in terms of things that you may want to get notified from monitoring perspectives. What about that client? Let's go to that client. So here's our client, and we happen to be on a very cool feature. This is one that I get pretty excited about. Quatro's crosslink function is in reference to that remote access we were talking about. Well, here's an example. We've got Kerry's web-based Borealis interface. We can go in and we can log into that. And now we can do visitor management right through Quattro, right in the client interface, keeping that uniform interface and not having to go to another application because it's right inside Quattro. So now we're not going door to door. Here's Kerry's doors.web interface, and I can log into that. And we'll use this as the example for visitor management. So I can come in here and I can see what's going on. And I can take a look and I can, we got visitors coming in, we have existing users. We can go in and take care of all that functionality right through the software. Well, what about that remote desktop configuration we were talking about? Well, I'll have to see if I can get one on here. I don't know if I have one set up currently. Let's see if we got. No, I don't have one currently available. I can show you immediately. But essentially, with the Crosslink Advanced, it would allow me to go and remote desktop into the server. And then I can do Windows updates. I can do disk cleanup. I can do, if I'm running an antivirus on the system, which should only be ran on the C drive and when dealing with video surveillance, I can run all these different maintenance. I can run the Windows updates. I can um, if I've got a network available storage or cloud-based storage for a hybrid solution, I can bring that in. By the way, one of the things we should have mentioned, does your VMS support not just local host, meaning installed on the server that you have on location, but does it support cloud-based deployment and does it support hybrid, which is the combination of the two? Quattro works on any environment, so you can deploy that whether it is in Amazon's um, cloud-based service, the AWS service, and whether it's in Microsoft's Azure service, Google's cloud service, or it's a virtual environment that you're running in your location for a local cloud deployment. So other things to consider about when we're going back to that discussion of budget and compatibility and scalability. What are some of the other cool things on here? We talked about multi-sensor, mobile app. So what about the mobile app? Well, one of the cool things with Quattro's mobile app is it allows you to not only stream a video back from your mobile device like a body cam, but it will also tag the GPS information to let you see where that person is. And you can link that to street maps and you can do previews on that. You can turn around get a good idea where they are. Just could give you, if you're dealing with a large campus or if you're dealing with a virtual guard type of scenario, it's built into Control. Again, there's that learning curve made very, very low. In this case, you have a mobile app, you've got Control. In a traditional sense, if we were talking about body cam functionality, we would have an entire different system geared just to body cam usage and body cam management. That's an entirely brand new learning curve on top of the learning curve of the VMS you might be looking at. Quattro brings that to just one learning curve, not two or three or four. So again, gets you up and running, gets your area secure, things to really drive things home for you. Another area where Quattro comes into play, digital signage. We talk about driving video feeds from cameras, but we can also drive uh, video clips as a video source. We can drive still images as a video source, and then we can turn around and we can push them out to a client like this that's running on a monitor. You could go full screen, and you wouldn't even know that you were running a VMS client. These could be moving images. You can manage them and have layouts that pop up at different times of the day. So digital signage now becomes something else to add to the mix of things you can do. We talked about D2PD and the emergency communications. Again, all of this is to bring things right into the VMS, into the minimizing of things, into being able to turn around and really reduce response times. A few things about Quattro itself that really don't have time to go into, but we can mention. Uh, you turn around and you can blur functions out. So you have what's I affectionately call identity protection or ID protection, because you can blur specific locations out and you can blur when people are coming through areas so that their faces are not shown or are shown depending on what security requirements are. What about visual shortcuts? Well, visual shortcuts, I can just set up a zone, and when I click on that zone, that's going to bring me to the next camera. I don't need to know what the title of that camera is. If you're in a panic situation, you could have 20 minutes or 20 years experience in a panic situation. You are probably not going to remember what that next camera is if you're monitoring a large number of cameras. The zone simplify it. Click on the zone, go to the next camera, don't have to think about it. You're just following the person of interest as they move around. These are great functions. What about POS? We bring POS functionality directly into the software. And again, you're not going to have another VMS package or another package in terms of a POS platform that you have to deal with because it's built into the system. So again, simplification, lowering that learning curve, and making things simpler to as instead of more complex when it comes to that deployment and requirements and the way it impacts the budget. All right, let's get back over to our presentation. I get a little excited when we're talking about all the functionality that Quattro does. But what I want to do is give you a chance to know about the new version of Quattro that we just recently released, 1.23. Improvements that we've added to it: textual visualization. Now we're back to the POS functionality, but textual visualization also comes into play with data that can be collected by those IoT devices. Enhanced PTZ control of cameras that might be connected to the system. Improved alarm management. I mentioned that before with the alarm pane that the client wants you with. The ability to create those additional filter tabs. And of course, we always have to have bug fixes and stability improvements. System grows, cameras and firmware on those devices may change, so you always want to make sure that you're always compliant and compatible with those devices. All right, here's my second favorite thing, Q&A. So I've given a lot of information. There's theoretically, there's a lot of information that you're bringing to the table with you which is one of the reasons why you're looking at this webinar. So if you've got any general questions or based off of stuff you've seen, stuff that you're already aware of, now's the great time to bring them up. Okay, we'll give everyone just a couple of moments. Like I said, it is a lot of information to kind of digest. In a worst case scenario, if a question doesn't come to mind right now, you can always follow up with an email. You can always reach out to us through our website. You can always reach out to us through our phone. So how could you contact us? Well, you can reach out to 919-230-8700. Ask for our TSDs or our support, our security department. You can you can go to the website, gansecurity.com. If you're looking for information specifically on Quattro/Quattro. If you want to discuss sales, if you're on the East Coast, you can reach out to Mr. Elliot Dean at cbcamerica.com. If you're on the West Coast or Midwest locations, you can reach out to Jim Holohan. If you're on the West Coast, Mexico or South America, you can always reach out to Jerry Contreras. And if you got generalized technical questions, you can always reach out to me. So, one more round for any potential questions. Not seeing any hands raised. Okay. On that note, like I said, there's always an opportunity to follow up with questions afterwards. So on that note, we're going to go ahead. We're going to thank everybody for attending the webinar. I believe that a link will be sent out at a later date for a video copy of the webinar, so you'll have that additional information, as well as the ability to go to our website and check out our support that we offer there. So on that note, I wish everybody a good day. I'm happy that you were able to attend the webinar today, and take care of yourselves. Good day.
Brian.
You're welcome.